Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. Patch 11.2 PTR is in full swing, bringing with it a bunch of class changes, which is exactly what a lot of players wanted to see for the meta to get a bit of a shakeup. One of the classes that's receiving new talents and a bunch of adjustments is the fan favorite, the Hunter, with many improvements to the hero talents from the Sentinel, Pack Leader, and Dark Ranger, but also spec adjustments, a little bit for survival, just a tiny bit, though consequentially definitely noticeable changes, but a good portion of this focusing on the range specs, beast mastery, and marksmanship, giving them some fun tools to play into, and a lot of these actually do look like a bunch of quality of life improvements. But looking at the length of the video, you can tell it's a long one, so I kind of want to dive into it as soon as possible and go over everything that we have so far, starting with general changes, hero specs, and spec specifics. But as always though, if you guys want to catch more regular updates for class changes and major updates for the patch 11.2 over on the PTR, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. You know, now that I'm looking at the Hunter set, I actually understand what they were trying to go with it. There was a number of players that I saw, a lot of my friends in particular, who were just not really excited about the new Hunter tier set. But now that I'm seeing the Mythic version, I kind of get it. It's supposed to be Alaria's set, or at least kind of reminiscent of Alaria's current set right now. The shoulders, like the chestplate armor, all that. The helmet, I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think what a lot of players did see is initially the recolors of this. You know, like the LFR recolor, you have the normal recolor, which looks like almost like a mage lookalike set, Mythic, which is just purple. I think where it starts to make sense is when you put it in Mythic, but it's like, I guess it's not that bad on this recolor specifically. Either way, this video is not about Hunter's mods, although that is going to be part of that Hunter experience, and I feel like Hunters have gotten screwed over by some weird tier sets for the last few patches, if not expansions. But we do want to go over the new talents that they've gotten. We got a couple of talents with the general changes, though a good portion of this is going to be hero talent changes, specifically Dark Ranger, as well as the spec changes, mostly focusing on BM survival and a little bit of survival, BM marksmanship and a little bit of survival. Got my specs wrong completely. One of the general changes for Hunters that we are seeing though is a new talent called Harmonize. Harmonize is on the same row as Explosive Shot. However, for some playstyle specs and builds, like Beast Mastery, a good portion of it, Explosive Shot just didn't really find a way to land well, like in raid content. You don't really use this as a priority ability in single target, even though there's challenges to further amplify it, like Blackrock Munitions. That being said, you can actually now go with the talent of Harmonize, so instead of playing around a Explosive Shot, you can now play around a pet damage buff. That's all it is. It's just an amp to your pets, which normally increases them by 4%. This also allows talents like Blackrock Munitions, which buffs the damage of Explosive Shot, to also buff Harmonize, so increasing it from 4 to 6%. So if you just want to go for pure pet damage, which is great for BM, or if let's say you're playing Survival and you want to go for a little bit more raw pet damage instead of Explosive Shot setups, like let's say those talents you don't really want to play into them, even though Survival does have quite a decent bit of support for it. This is primarily there for BM, but it is available for the other specs as well if those are the builds that you're looking to play into. I'm just worried now that marksmanship hunters might accidentally like, oh, this buffs my eagle damage, right? You know what I mean? That would be super unfortunate. I think this is an interesting talent, but I do wonder if maybe that should be made BM exclusive, just because the other specs actually do want to play around Explosive Shot, because there's enough talents to at least support it. Also, the talent of Moment Opportunity. When a trap is triggered, you gain 30% movement speed. This used to have apparently a internal cooldown. They removed it, so now if you get traps proccing back to back, you can actually now steadily gain some movement speed from Moment of Opportunity. From there though, we can move on to the hero talents, and Dark Ranger has gotten through a number of changes. A bunch of talents change positions, and you'll see things like Blake Arrow is really high up, Bell Tolls is down the middle, Blake Powder is at the very top, and then there's some of the other talents that adjust and change some of those playstyles are below that, which is quite interesting. The ability itself and as well as some of its components did also get adjusted as well, which is pretty interesting. There's now a new talent down below the AoE tree, or AoE side of the tree, called Umbral Reach. Black Arrow's periodic damage is now increased by 100%, so the dot damage is a little stronger. If Blake Arrow damages 2 or more targets, you will gain Beast, Cleave, or Trick Shots if talented. Blake Powder is a talent above. Black Arrow explodes in a cloud of shadow with sulfur on impact, dealing shadow damage to all enemies on an 8-yard cone behind the target. So if you are in an AoE situation as Beast Mastery or Marksmanship, you now will be able to gain Trick Shots or Beast Cleave. This is really cool because For a while, Beastmaster and Marksmanship Hunters always had a little bit of weird time in AoE content around the playstyle of Dark Ranger, because fitting in the Black Arrow ability and alongside of some of the other high priority AoE abilities, it was just a little awkward. But now this should hopefully place Black Arrow in a higher priority, as it now plays better into the AoE playstyles of both of those two specs. So it's probably a lot better to get more procs of Bleak Powder, so then you can get free Beast Cleaves or trick shots depending on your spec. So this should end up elevating the usefulness of Black Arrow in AoE content specifically, which is a pretty nice change. Below we also have Bell Tolls, which has gotten changed quite a bit. Its original effect was Black Arrow can now be used on targets at 80% health or above, so making it a good execute ability but also an opener ability. That effect has now become baseline as part of Black Arrow, which makes it usable on targets above 80% health or below 20, which is really cool to see. Its effect, however, has been changed. Firing a Black Arrow will now increase all damage dealt by you and your pets by 3% for 12 seconds, and multiple instances of this effect may overlap. This means that if I were to, let's say, talent into the ability really quickly, it kind of works like if you play Bear Druid, Guardian, and the Iron 4 ability, you don't have the effect stacking, but the effect itself can overlap, so you can have multiple instances of that effect proccing at the same time. So it is a nice little buff for the Black Arrow, but also it gives you more interaction with your pets, with your raw damage, and for any resets of Black Arrow, like with the talents of like Withering Fire, for instance. When Black Arrow hits multiple targets, then it becomes very interesting in those situations, because then if you can spread a bunch of Black Arrow, or at least use Black Arrow multiple times over, you could greatly increase your overall damage, giving it a little bit of this ramp up potential. So it becomes very cool, bursty, but also it encourages frequent uses of Black Arrow as an ability, which I think makes it just very compelling as an ability no matter which spec of Hunter you end up playing into. The talent of Soul Drinker has also been updated. It now increases Black Arrow's damage by 15% and Black Powder's damage by 20%. It competes still with Shadow Hounds, which allows Black Arrow a small chance to manifest a Dark Hound that will charge to enemies dealing damage, I'm pretty sure all shadow damage, while cleaving damage to nearby targets. So you have an option of just either prioritizing Black Arrow, which some marksman hunters may want to do, or if you want to do for more pet damage with AoE as Beast Mastery, you could also do Shadow Hounds. However, BM has a couple of changes where Black Arrow is getting buffed up, not through a direct damage buffs or a kill command or anything, or kill shot or anything for BM, but there's some stat adjustments to allow some of their personal damage to be a little bit stronger than before. Withering Fire has also been updated. It will now try to prioritize any target that doesn't have the Black Arrow's periodic effect, which is really cool. That means you'll be able to spread those Black Arrows a little bit more consistently, spreading the dot to multiple targets. This is awesome because it just means you'll have more rolling dots on against the multiple targets of enemies with Withering Fire. Should make the ability overall feel a little bit stronger. Also, they changed up the way the Black Arrow periodic effect damage works. So normally the damage of Black Arrow is something that is just something that can be applied to a target, but when you shoot a fresh new arrow, it normally would refresh it. Now it has a rolling effect instead. So if, let's say I were to get all the pets attacking the target and I shoot a Black Arrow, what this means is the shadow damage of Black Arrow will roll from one dot of Black Arrow into another effect. So I could potentially have the effect roll into itself. So the dot damage doesn't get refreshed, the duration doesn't get refreshed, it just rolls the duration of the first dot into the second dot instead. So as you're hitting the main target, you're not losing out on that Black Arrow uptime. It just rolls into it, very similar to like the Fire Mage Mastery or Devouring Plague for Shadow Priest. This means that Black Arrow doesn't lose its value, it just rolls that dot and the damage into the next shot, or at least it's supposed to. I'm not 100% if it is doing that right now, but at least that's what it's supposed to be doing, and that is good. Like, once that functions properly, that'll be very strong for the ability, just because it means you don't really lose out any damage of Black Arrow. They've also made a couple of new changes. For Beast Mastery, Shadow Hounds can no longer spawn alongside of Dire Beasts. They just gotta spawn separately with a Black Arrow dealing its damage. Black arrow damage has been buffed up by 20% for Beast Mastery specifically, by the way, so for BM they're trying to make this ability a little bit stronger. Also, the Talent of Phantom Pain has been adjusted for BM and Marksmanship. For Beast Mastery, Kill Command Cleave damage is increased to 20% and up to 30% for Marksmanship Hunter. So spreading Black Arrow to multiple targets becomes even more important if at all possible. This becomes a lot stronger inside of content like Withering Fire uses, but also in AoE content if you can spread it to a few targets, or at least keep the dot rolling between a number of targets. That means it can potentially result in better overall cleave damage. Aside of Dark Ranger, we also have some adjustments to Pack Leader. Pack Leader's defensive value compared to Dark Ranger and Sentinel has been kind of low. They usually get this buff of Shell Cover, which summons a little turtle on your shoulder that gives you like, what is it, 10% DR, 15% DR, which is usually kind of weak. It's essentially one of the weakest defensive options that the Pack Leader hero talent can offer, and it's just not that good. So they're trying to make it a little bit better. So Shell Cover is now going to proc whenever you drop below 60% health, summon the aid of a turtle that made it to the water, reducing the damage taken by 15% for 10 seconds. However, this DR, this damage reduction, scales based on your miss and health, up to 35% damage reduction if you're at 10% health. So the lower health you are, when this procs at 60%, the lower health you are, the stronger the defensive becomes. This hopefully makes it a much better overall defensive, like a cheat death type of mechanic or component that will hopefully help save off even more damage regularly. So if you're taking very little damage, it's still going to give you a decent bit of DR. If you're taking heavy damage to follow, it will scale up to try to match it at least a little bit up to a certain point, up to 35% DR maximum. This is good because hunters sometimes can bleed out to abilities, bleed out to damage taken, and this could be a nice little like shell cover, nice little frontline cover before you end up blowing a big defensive for an ability. Hopefully, this is just still not amazing. I would have loved to see some sort of like a health recovery component with Shell Cover, but this is at least better as it does try to improve an aspect of Pack Leader, which Pack Leader is generally pretty good on its own, but just defensively, it just has always been kind of mediocre. Lastly, we have Sentinel, and their capstone ability of Lunastorm has gotten a nice bit of an improvement. So the way that Lunastorm works is every 30 seconds, you use Wildfire Bomb or Rapid Fire, depending if you're Survival or Marksman, to summon this Lunastorm that does a bunch of arcane damage to the target. It also can proc off of your Sentinel ability. There's AoE components. It just is really strong of a capstone for Sentinel. It is massive amounts of damage. It's a huge contribution to its overall power. However, it always is a little awkward because normally every 30 seconds it's up, but if you, let's say, are using Wildfire Bomb aggressively as survival, it doesn't mean that you'll be able to use Lunastorm every 30 seconds. Or same thing with Rapid Fire for Marksman. You'll usually use both those abilities as part of your rotation, but you're always trying to find a way to sync up Lunastorm with some of those other abilities. So you have to sometimes hold Rapid Fire or Wildfire, which is not a great feeling. They're changing that a little bit to make Lunastorm easier to manage. Every 30 seconds, it just resets the cooldown of Wildfire Bomb or your Rapid Fire, granting you a free use of either one of those abilities, so you can guarantee that Lunastorm, once it's available, it's always ready to use immediately. That's really good to see. I think that's going to make it a little bit easier to play around with, less cognitive load, less need for weak auras. Just as soon as you see the reset, send the ability as soon as possible. That's really good, and it feels really good to press enter and play. This also becomes a lot more important because Wildfire Bomb ends up being just an ability used pretty regularly as survival in particular, and it's just kind of a core ability you don't really want to hold ever as best you can, especially with the current hero set that is going to be changing soon. But that reset does feel really nice. I think there's potentially could be some cool stuff you could do as a marksmanship because there's quite a lot more talents and a lot more power baked in behind Rapid Fire though, like double tap for instance. So I wonder if you could do like a double tap type of an opener as a, or double tap type of an opener as a marksmanship, using Rapid Fire double tap into another Rapid Fire double tap, you know, using maybe like 2 shots and maybe using your volley. So there's some opportunity there too, but this is overall a very nice overall change. But from there, we can now move on to the spec of Beast Mastery, which has gone through a number of talent changes. You will see that the actual core of the talent tree isn't all that different, but there are some adjustments to some of the positionals of certain talents, and they're in slightly different locations, and the functionality has been adjusted a little bit. Before that, however, there's a pretty massive change to the Beast Mastery kit, primarily their mastery. Their mastery has gone through a number of changes, primarily being, not only does it increase your pet damage, but it also, at 50% of that mastery value, now increases the damage of your shots and traps by, well, 50% of that hit. So at 56% mastery, or 55.5 rather, you're increasing your pet damage by 55.5%, and half of that, 29.2, for your own shots as well as traps. The traps one is interesting, but this is primarily done for abilities such as Barb Shot, Black Arrow, Cobra Shot, any type of your own personal damage sources that can sometimes feel be limited by your builds. Like, if let's say you're playing Pack Leader, buff your pet damage, because that's going to buff up your pet directly. But if you're Dark Range, you're buffing your Mastery as a stat, it doesn't actually impact the Black Arrow, but now that it does. So if you are trying to go for like a more of a bleed build, Barb Shot damage, Black Arrow damage, there's now an opportunity for you to invest into Mastery to buff your pet, but it also now ends up buffing up your personal shots as well. So even abilities such as Explosive Shot also get buffed up with this as well. Even though you probably will see a lot more BM hunters likely going into Harmonize, because that is just going to buff your pet damage. That's a lot of cleave damage, that's a lot of personal damage for your pet, lots of talent to interact with your pet. But there's now an opportunity for you to invest into your personal shots damage, which I think is really, really cool to see. Outside of this, BM Hunters have gone through a number of new talent changes and adjustments. One of the biggest ones being a capstone on the right-hand side. You'll see that the Call of the Wild is a left-hand side capstone. You have the Bestial Wrath capstones towards the bottom that modify the ability, except for Brutal Companion. But sorta, it works with the Barb Shot. Barb Shot plays off of Bestial Wrath, Barb Wrath, things like that. So I guess it's still thematic. But the right-hand side is going to have your Dire Frenzy. Below that is Huntmaster's Call, which is pretty low in the talent tree now compared to where it was previously. And below that is Wild Speaker, a new passive. Dire Beast will now obey your kill command. This is huge because this used to be a tier set at some point. I think towards the tail end of Dragonflight potentially. Dire Beast will now obey your kill command, dealing his damage at 30% effectiveness. So when you kill command, not only do your main pet, side pet all attack, but now your bestial, your Dire Beast will also attack, which is really cool. Quite a lot of pets actually count as Dire Beasts too, so this is pretty massive. Bestial Wrath now also sends your Dire Beast into rage, increasing their damage dealt by 15% for 15 seconds. So if you have a bunch of these summon pets and you press Bestial Wrath, it buffs them as well. So if you're playing like a full-on big pet build, summoner build as Beast Mastery, with Wild Speaker, you can now have quite a lot of value towards buffing up all of those pets by a significant bit, which is quite awesome. This is likely going to be, I think, probably a very, very consequential talent. I imagine it will be very, very strong, but we'll see how tuning and how some of the new tier sets and the gear will end up like matching up for BM. But I imagine this was a really good tier set back in whenever that was released, so it will likely end up being, I am assuming, a very, very strong, on paper at least, capstone option. Next, the talent of Dire Beast has gotten redesigned. Speaking of Dire Beast, it is now a passive, so it's not something that procs from your an ability usage. It is now something that procs on its own from your bleeds. Your bleed effects, all bleeds it looks like, have a 7% chance of attracting a powerful wild beast that attacks your target for 8 seconds. And there's a number of bleeds in a game from your Barb Shot, so this one is intended to work initially with Barb Shot, but technically you also have Laceration, not 100% of that procs it. You also do have a bleeding effect from Huntmaster's Call, as well as Bloodshed. And some of these abilities like Bloodshed actually also has been changed quite a decent bit, which I'll go over in a second. But if let's say you have like your, let's say, Barb Shots on targets, you'll see that you're now spawning in bunch of Dire Beasts, and you can see them just kind of spawning in one by one, and you have 3 of them now passively just spawning in. So it's 7% chance for them to proc, or rather 7% chance for them to spawn in, but the actual pets themselves now can be buffed up by all of your other abilities, like your kill commands and stuff. Try to see, I guess if I'm going to kill command, all of them are going to bite, aren't they? But you can see as it summons up quite a decent bit of pets overall, just passively on its own. So it looks like all of them are doing quite a decent bit of overall damage. And you can see those pets are kill commanding, and they're quite a decent bit of overall output. So going for like a full-on pet summoner build and summoning up as many Dire Beasts as possible might actually be the play. Oh yeah, I'm also summoning a lot more pets. Don't worry about it. They literally added Stampede as a tier set, so that is a talent. But you can see how strong this combination can be together. Speaking of that Bloodshed ability we were talking about earlier, It basically still has the same bleed as before. 1 minute cooldown, it lasts only 12 seconds, but the blade damage has been significantly increased to 2.6 million over 12 seconds. Damage from bloodshed has an increased chance to summon Dire Beast. So if you are playing into a big Dire Beast build, bloodshed now could be a talent that, one, is a lot easier to pick up because it's a lot higher in talent tree. And two, it just ends up being, I think, potentially a core skill if you play into a big bleed build. So now not only do you have a pet build where you're summoning more pets, but your bleed damage can now go up quite a decent bit and be a lot more of this periodic damage hunter build that summons in additional pets. And when you kill command, you're not necessarily looking to buff up your main 2 pets, but rather all those side pets will now start to kill command. Even Haughty will start to kill command. So now you have more of this like overwhelming number of pets that you could summon together with bleeds for some additional damage, and I think together it just sounds so good. From there, we also saw a couple other talent adjustments, such as Killer Instinct no longer has this execute damage. It can now just increase the damage of kill command by 5 and 10%. So less big execute value, but just overall more damage value for your kill commands. The talent of Huntmaster's Call has also been adjusted. It now requires you to summon Dire Beast 6 times before you can sound the Horn of Valor. But Fenrir's bleed damage, the one he bounces, now has been greatly increased, buffed up by 500%. This is going to be a little bit more of like a scaling value, I think, and potentially subject to tuning in the future, but 2.1 million bleed over 8 seconds doesn't seem all that bad. And finally, another talent change that has been made is the talent of Hunter Spray no longer causes kill shot to hit multiple targets. This is basically making it a single target ability without giving it cleave potential. This is primarily done so they can tune Black Arrow ability independently for Dark Ranger, because there was an obvious synergy between kill shots, dealing more damage, and cleaving to multiple targets while Black Arrow is active. They wanted to limit the potential of it with Dark Ranger, and basically that's all it is. So Hunter Spray is just good, maybe single target option more than anything. If you are summoning up a bunch of pets, because it's 10% more damage plus Black Arrow damage could still be good. It is still going to buff it. But I guess I wanted to make sure to limit the scope of how much can Black Arrow cleave. Overall, though, I do think Beastmaster with the changes to Dire Beast is really cool. Though, okay, I was going to say for a second, sometimes they make talents where, like, you take a talent at the top, and sometimes you can, like, not take it, but still take capstones that rely on it. But it looks like they've actually thought of it completely, so you can't really pick up any of these talents, like, if you don't pick up Dire Beast. I thought maybe, like, you could skip out Dire, but still go to capsules, but no, they're all pretty airtight sealed here. So it looks like you will be able to go into a proper Dire Beast and buff the damage of those pets. I really like what they've done with this here. I do wonder if Wildspeaker would actually find some meta play. We'll see how the tuning goes, but definitely it's exciting to see BM getting a very powerful tier set as a talent option, and hopefully we'll see more of that for other classes. From there, we have the spec of Marksmanship Hunter, and there's been some adjustments for this spec as well. Yeah, pets, you gotta disappear for this one, because this is a wrong spec for you. So they've also adjusted positions for many of the talents, not all, but you can see the talent tree actually changed in shape a little bit compared to live realms. There's a number of changes that have been made for many of the talents of Marksmanship, many little adjustments that are really worth looking into. One of them being precise shots. They've actually adjusted it so now it not only doesn't come with an increase of damage to multi-shot and arcane shot, but it now also has a global cooldown reduction for the abilities buffed by precise shot. So when you use, let's say, aim shot as a marksmanship, you get 2 stacks, or I guess I gain 2 stacks of precise shot, but your next ability of arcane shot will have a shorter GCD. So you can like spend it really quickly and then move on to another ability. Very fast. So it's really awesome actually when you think about it, because this allows you to basically spend less time using abilities like your aim shot, for instance, and you can follow up with your, or I guess spend less time using arcade shot or multi-shot, and allows you to follow up into some of those other hard-hitting abilities immediately. So it's really good to see. It just should hopefully improve the flow of marksmanship a little bit, just that GCD reduction, just so you can get you back into the game, back into pressing some of your big core abilities as soon as possible. Another change they made is made lock and load more baseline. It's now at the center of your bar, or at least center of your talent tree. They've also increased the chance for it to proc to 10%. And now it comes with bad luck protection. Your ranged auto attacks have a 10% chance to trigger lock and load. What the bad luck protection means is, as I'm auto attacking the target, normally every single shot gives me a 10% chance for it to proc. But with bad luck protection, that chance internally increases little by little by little until it procs. So eventually, I get a guarantee of a lock and load proc. Like, it doesn't happen like every single shot. It does, maybe like up to 10. I don't know how much it increases by. I don't know if it increases by like 10% per auto attack until it's like a guaranteed chance. I have no idea regarding like exactly those numbers specifically. All we can tell is now it has bad luck protection, so that eventually you do get a procking. This means that you're going to have less pulls inside of a raid or even dungeons where you just get like no lock and load procs at all. And other times where you get a ton of them and you're doing a bunch of damage. This should hopefully make the talent in the passive feel more consistent, and also centering it allows it to be part of every build, so you can't really avoid it, and lock and load becomes a baseline part of the spec. The talent of trick shots, which is kind of more or less where lock and load was, is now on the right hand side, which means if you're not doing single AoE damage, you don't have to pick up this talent at all. It's off to the side. If you are doing AoE, you can commit talent points into it, but by itself, it doesn't have to be part of your single target build. You can still pick up trick shots as it was. You can pick up Aspect of the Hydra as it was. If you are looking for more buffs towards AoE damage, there's now a talent of light ammo. Apparently this used to be a talent before, got removed, came back in. The talent now reads, trick shot causes aim shot and rapid fire to ricochet to 2 additional targets. Normally it has a 5 target cap, but now you can increase it to 7. That's a sizable amount. Or if you're playing around the Aspect of the Hydra, so you can cleave to 1 additional target for your aim shots, rapid fires, and arcane shots, you can now have that cleave for stronger damage. Normally it cleaves for 60% of the damage. That can be increased by 15%. So that's pretty good overall. Like, if you're just looking for a little bit of AoE with 2 talent points, you can upgrade your AoE damage by a significant margin. Down below, you also have a new update towards the center talents of either Unbreakable Bond, so you could use the pet again, but lose out on the Spotter's Mark bonus. Basically, you're never going to take a breakable bond, I think, unless you're doing a open world content. But it's just really buffed to avian specialization. They changed it, I think, from improved spotter's mark to avian spec. A damage bonus to spotter mark increased by 20%. Additionally, your eagle learns a new ability called fetch. This fetch ability is quite cool because normally, as hunters, you'd have this one, I think it was a glyph for a bit, where your pets, like if let's say you kill an enemy from a distance, if they're lootable, you can have your pets send out, grab whatever they have, bring it back to you, add it to your inventory. But now, based on as a talent, you can have your eagle swoop down, grab the stuff, bring it back to you, add it to your inventory. So you could loot enemies from a distance as a market ship. Not anything is going to make him super massive with raids and dungeons or whatever, but this is a cool quality of life service for marksmanship in particular. And I think this can be useful if, let's say, you kill an enemy that's out of reach, your eagle can still swoop up and grab the loot. That is really cool. I love the flavor of things like that. Not a lot of those in the update, but seeing more stuff like this, definitely a big fan. Outside of this, however, they've also adjusted some of the capstone choices for Marksmanship Hunter, like bottom left capstone that goes all the way to Windrunner's Quiver. Before that, you have a gate talent called Unmatched Precision, which increases now the damage bonus of precise shots by an additional 40%. So with all the buffs and all the stacks, you can actually have precise shots be increased by 126%. And this is cool for arcane shot, multi-shot, but if you're playing the Black Arrow Dark Ranger build, Guild Shot cannot benefit from precise shots at a reduced effectiveness, but can also consume precise shots. So now you can have that ability hit a little bit harder, and that could overall be potentially really strong together. This talent now leads into a choice of improved Streamline or Focused Aim, which are about the same as they were, and then leads into Windrunner's Quiver. The middle capstone is now a bit of a different choice too. Now you have a choice node between calling the shots that reduces true shots cooldown to 30 seconds, or to 1 minute 30 seconds instead of a 2-minute cooldown, or Unerring Vision, so you can get the crit damage and crit scaling for True Shot Aura, but at a 2-minute cooldown. So they're back now to having a stronger True Shot or a shorter True Shot. So it's now a choice between those two, backed as it was from like a while ago. However, further below that, we have Tensile Bowstring. While True Shot is active, considering precise shots extends True Shot, but also True Shot increases the effectiveness of Streamline by 50%, which can buff up the damage and the overall speed of your aim shots. And now the new capstone of that middle row is Double Tap. No longer do you have a choice node for Double Tap or another option, because I guess Double Tap just couldn't compete in certain content. But now you can pick up Double Tap in PvE content, essentially. Double tap is pretty good because cast a true shot or volley grants double tap, cause an aim shot to fire a second time, or your rapid fire to fire 80% additional shots during this channel. This could be really good for PvP hunters. This could be great because you can basically pick up double tap without losing out on potential damage amp. For PvE hunters, that potentially could be a ton of DPS as well. And like I said before, with things like your Lunar Storm resetting the cooldown of rapid fire, if you time it correctly, you could technically get like 2 double tap rapid fires if you wanted to. So this could potentially be really solid in some situations, but definitely gives you a little bit of opportunity for some experimentation with this now being your new capstone. Another capstone that got changed is the one with volley. Really below that, volley didn't change that much, but kill zone did a little. Your spells and attacks deal 8% increased damage. That actually has been nerfed a little, but ignores line of sight against a target of your volley. So like if you set up a volley against a target, you can now basically hit him through a wall. That isn't new. What is new, however, is the fact that volley can now maintain its debuff of the kill zone for 8 seconds after volley is over. So in PvP in particular, this is huge because let's say once an enemy gets hit by volley, they usually will move out of it. So then you go from having line of sight of the target to not, and it's pretty easy to avoid. But now even if they touch volley for a moment, you at least have 3 seconds of the kill zone debuff, so you can hit through walls, and you can still land those aim shot on rapid fire, which is all a marksmanship hunter really needs in PvP. This is a huge buff for PvP, but I guess in a way it could be a buff for PvE too, because you do deal more damage to the target. Though in good moments, good chance you're probably not going to be using volley for single target damage. You're probably going to be using it for AoE with salvo, but for PvPers, this is at least a nice buff. Also, bottom right capstone below Eagle's accuracy on our wins has been adjusted as well. Now it reads, when Eagle applies Spotter's Mark to a target, has a 100% chance to apply a Spotter's Mark to one additional target at 100% effectiveness. So if you are cleaving multiple targets or hitting multiple targets in AoE, whether with trick shots or Hydra, now anytime your Eagle applies the Spotter's Mark, it can apply it to an extra target, which means even more value for those aim shot cleaves. This is good. This is just overall going to make the talent a little more consistent. Makes it very much an AoE talent, especially with bullet hell down below. Like this becomes a pretty much an AoE capstone. It's because you won't really use it in single target. But overall, it is a bit of an improvement to the original Dalaran wins, as well as they changed the targeting for it so it's a little more consistent. Talking about some of the talents in the upper row just a little, right below precision detonation, we do have a change to shrapnel shot. Explosive shot now has a 100% chance to grant lock and load. This is huge, so if you're someone who's playing around the lock and load ability, trying to get the most value for lock and loads, as a marksmanship hunter, you will now be able to get it guaranteed. You do need to have, it doesn't look like it seems to work at all whatsoever right now, but explosive shot is supposed to at least grant you a lock and load 100% of the time. Not working, as you can tell, at least right now. Not really working at the moment, but hopefully it'll be working sometime in the near future. But for now, as it stands, yeah, not quite as consistent as it could be. Outside of this, they did a little bit more tuning for marksmanship. They buffed aim shot by 10% baseline. This is still subject to tuning, something they may keep or something they may revoke in the future. Who really knows, honestly. The talent of precision detonation will now have this damage buff be amped to 40% rather than 25%. Allowing you to use explosive shot into an aim shot combo in order to have the damage of the ability be instantaneous. Finally, the talent of Bullseye is no longer a 2-point talent node, it is now a 1-point talent node, which makes it a little bit easier for you to optimize your talent point economy to make the build that you're really looking forward to. And finally with that, we have the spec of Survival, which is going only through a small number of changes. One of them being improved Wildfire Bomb as a talent has made a return. It just buffs up the damage of Wildfire Bomb by 8%. So nothing crazy. Then I'm swapping out from Wildfire Arsenal, which was quick shot and auto attacks with two-handed weapons, increase the direct damage of your next Wildfire Bomb, stack it up to 3 times. So you no longer have to do that anymore. So now it's just going to be just a raw, simple Wildfire Bomb damage buff instead. Also below that, the talent of Call the Herd has been redesigned to be a little bit less confusing compared to what it was. It now just causes kill shot to deal additional 30% damage over 6 seconds as a bleeding effect. So just a straight up buff towards the kill shot damage. Below that is Born to Kill, which gives you a higher chance to gain death blow and increases kill shot damage further by 25%. Also very simple, very basic, and actually I think potentially very usable in comparison. That extra bleed damage, however, can go into things such as Outland Venom for every damage over time, critical strike damage, targets received is increased by 2%, so yet another way for you to buff that damage a little bit. However, they did take away the bleed from Bloodseeker. Unfortunately, Union Pet gain 10% attack speed for every bleeding enemy you have within 12 yards, which is unfortunate because prior to this, you would kill command, you put a bleed on a target. There is still laceration bleed, however, but there's no longer a bleed specifically from Bloodseeker. So the bleeding effect does apply, it does end up working, but now you'll need to look for other sources of bleeds if at all possible. And you can see laceration from your pet doesn't actually proc pretty consistently at all. Actually, was laceration a beast mastery thing? Yeah, no, laceration I think was a leftover BM thing actually. I don't think my pet is supposed to be lacerating there. So actually, this becomes a little bit less good, because the only way to really put up a bleed is now through a kill shot, which deals damage over a certain amount of time, but even that bleed doesn't last all that long. However, Butchery will put up a bleed on those targets, so it'll give you a momentary opportunity to land some bleeds, but it doesn't seem to be applying those super consistently, or at least as quickly. There seems to be some sort of a bit of a delay with laceration or Bloodseeker and how it functions. Actually, now that I think about it, I think they made Bloodseeker a little bit less good than it was, because Merciless Blow is the only thing that really allows you to gain bleeds. So it's from either Flanking Strike or Butchery, but also there's Spearhead that puts a bleed for a few seconds, but you don't have any more consistent ways to apply a bleed to targets outside of Call the Herd. So this is going to actually impact Bloodseeker value, and I think probably make this talent a little bit less good now that it no longer has a bleed. This is an unfortunate thing for survival, but it's not something I actually considered until I started messing with it. For some reason, I was under the for some reason I thought Marksman Hunter still had that thing where when you crit, put a bleed on a target like a passive. But no, with Bloodseeker, this is just a little bit less good. So a little bit of an unfortunate one. However, there are damage buffs to complement this change towards Bloodseeker. They did buff the initial damage of Wildfire Bomb by 50%. Is it enough to make up the difference? Maybe. We'll have to see exactly how the tuning numbers stand out, but they're buffing the immediate damage of Wildfire Bomb by a significant bit. Also, Ruthless Marauder has been buffed up, where Fear of the Eagle damage is increased by 10% and has a 100% chance to generate a stack of Tip the Spear. So normally you would kill command to get Tip the Spear, that would cause your abilities to get buffed up, and then you would maybe get a Tip the Spear just so your next ability deals more damage, and sometimes you'll spend it on Fear of the Eagle. And while Fear of the Eagle deals damage, it has a chance to apply Tip the Spear, but now it's a guaranteed chance, so after Tip, you can actually use 3 of your powerful big hits back to back to back all in a row to deal additional damage. That is actually quite good. That is yet another buff to make up the difference for the Bloodseeker, in fact. Also, the talent of Explosive Expert, which is necessary if you're going to be going into the Tip build, has also been buffed up, buffing the damage of Wildfire Bomb and Explosive by 5 and 10% instead of 2.5 and 5. So this is a significant buff as well. Also, I think a nice way for you to make up for Bloodseeker as a talent. But with that being said, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. It was a lot to look at the whole Hunter revamp, and while it was mostly some adjustments, there was just so much to talk about either way, as Hunters are going through yet another massive set of changes, and hopefully they'll come out on top heading to the next season. At least right now, they're looking good in PTR as far as tuning is concerned, though. As always, though, I do want to thank all of you so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Also, join our community, especially if you want to discuss all of the newest class changes, or if you want to just keep up with all the newest updates as soon as they hit the PTR realms. But also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.